Welcome everyone to today's demonstration of the AerMinute model. Today's demo will be about the AerMinute model, what it is and what it does. And then after I talk about that, we will go through the required inputs of the model and the output files that it creates. And after we go through that, we'll go ahead and do an example model run. Right, so AerMinute is a preprocessor for the AerMinute model, which, as you can recall from last week's webinar, creates meteorological data files for the air dispersion model. And the AerMinute model reads in files with wind speed and wind direction data, either recorded every minute or recorded every 5 minutes. Then AerMinute calculates the hourly averages for wind speed and wind direction for each hour. And AerMinute creates a file that AerMinute can then use with those hourly averages, which gives the number of calm hours that are in the AerMinute output files. As again, AerMinute creates a file of hourly wind directions and wind speeds, which AerMinute then uses in its metadata processing. So you might ask, should we then use AerMinute? And at least in the United States, the answer is yes. The United States Environmental Protection Agency published a memo about AerMinute back in 2013, called the use of ASOS meteorological data. And what they say is that they recommend that you use AerMinute whenever you process data with AerMinute. And this quote is from their modeling guidance published in March 2013. So at least in the United States, the United States agency does recommend using this AerMinute whenever you're on AerMinute. So as mentioned before, there are two kinds of data files that AerMinute can process: the 1-minute files and 5-minute files. They can be downloaded using these links, or using our AerMinute graphical user interface, which we will see in the example model run later in this presentation. And the way that data are organized is that there's 1 month of data in each file that you download. And also, as I said, each file contains data for 1 month for one observation station. Okay, and AerMinute was originally released in February 2011, and it was last updated in October 2015 to be able to process the 5-minute data files. And that version 1.5.2.7.2 is the latest version as of May 2018, as of today. All right, so now we'll go through the what goes into the AerMinute input file on the next few slides. So that input file is structured a little bit like the AerMinute input file in that it has specific keywords that you enter into it for your data files and your settings. And an example file is listed on this slide and the next slide. First, tell it what is the start month and year and the end month and year of data to process, the data files you want to use, optionally including the 5-minute data files, and finally, what are the output files that you want AerMinute to create? And actually, I made one. There's also this IFW group setting. And what that setting is for is that if a station has a sonic anemometer, you can tell AerMinute tell AerMinute to process it that way, and AerMinute will take that information into account, and then there you enter either yes or no. Now then, after that, as we saw on the previous slide, you have to tell AerMinute which data files to process, and you have to include each data file in order, in chronological order, 1 file per line in the input file. These files are about 3 to 4 megabytes in size for each month of data. Now, optionally, if you want to also include 5-minute data files, they also have to be listed in the input file in chronological order, and each file has to be listed on a separate file. Sorry, on a separate line. And they also have certain formats. That includes the station call sign, the year processing, and the month. And these files are somewhat smaller, up to about 1.2 megabytes. So going back to our example, going back to our file format, you have the 1-minute data files, followed by optionally the 5-minute data files, followed by your output files. As I may have mentioned, you can include both 1-minute files and 5-minute files in the same run. And in that case, if there's a missing data in the 1-minute file, but the data can be found for the same time period in the 5-minute file, the 5-minute data will be substituted. And also, whenever you do run AerMinute, all of your data files must be for the same observation station. So you cannot mix files from multiple stations in the same AerMinute run. Now, if you are running AerMinute and you have your surface data file from AerMinute, you can tell AerMinute what that file is. It's not going to be used in any of the calculations, but AerMinute can tell you what's different between the surface data file from AerMinute and the 1-minute data files that you're using in AerMinute, and it will just tell you what's different between the two files. And you can use that to just compare the two files and see what the difference is between them. And this is an optional step, and it's not going to be included in our example model run. And finally, AerMinute has several output files. The only one that's mandatory is the first one, the hourly average winds file that AerMinute will create. So that's the only file you have to tell AerMinute to create. Everything else is optional. And there's a summary file there. And then if you are including the source data file or the 5-minute data files, AerMinute can summarize those files as well for you. And the details are on this slide. So the only file you must have is the hourly output file, and the other files are just for quality assurance purposes, and they are optional. All right, so finally we come to our example model run. So in last week's webinar, we processed net data for the year 2012. And actually, when we did that, we processed for the time period from January 1st, 2012 to January 1st, 2013. So that means that we will need 8 AerMinute files from January 2012 to January 2013. So in this example model run, we will process certain data files, and then we'll see what happens when you take the hourly winds file that AerMinute creates and put that into AerMinute. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So first, here is the AerMinute file from last week's presentation. What we've done there is that we have processed data for the Asheville, North Carolina station from January 1, 2012 to January 1, 2013. We had a strict data file and an upper air data file in that example model run. And actually, when you run AerMinute, if you take a look at the report file for stage 3 and go to the bottom of that file, AerMinute will tell you how many hours you had that were calm. So in this case, it's 2,970 hours. So almost 3,000 hours in the year at calm winds. Again, this information is found in the stage 3 file produced by AerMinute. So now let's see what happens when we run AerMinute and use the AerMinute file. All right, now to run AerMinute, you can open the AerMinute program that's included in Beast, and run AerMinute using our program. All right, so we'll go ahead and go through all the inputs here, and then from the model. So the first inputs will be the starting and ending period to process. In this case, it has to be January 2012 through January 2013, because those are the months for which we run AerMinute in our example. All right, and I am going to omit the surface data file from AerMinute in this run. Next, we have to select the model station for which we are processing data, and that is the Asheville, North Carolina airport. So I'll go ahead and select that here and click OK. And when I do our AerMinute program, will automatically fill in the information about whether the station has a sonic anemometer. So this is filled in for us. The next step is to download the 1-minute data files. And to download either 1-minute or 5-minute data files, you select the file tab and click the download button. I've already done that. I've already done the steps, so I'll go ahead and skip it in this model run. But you will have to click the download button to download files in your model runs. And once we have the files downloaded, we need to go to the 1-minute tab and select them. I need to select the folder where our files are, and select the files we want to process. And in this case, I do want to select all 13 files we downloaded from January 2012 to January 2013. Okay. So now that the files have been selected, now we go to the output tab and say what output files we want to create. And in this model run, I will go ahead and just create the hourly winds file. So to do that, I will click the browse button and just enter the name of the file that I want AerMinute to create. Okay, so once I do that and click save, we are now ready to run the AerMinute model. And to do that, all I have to do is just go to the Run tab and click the Run AerMinute button. And now the model will run, and it'll process the files one by one. And it takes about a minute or the AerMinute model takes about a minute or two to run. All right, so now that the AerMinute model has run, let's take a look at what that hourly winds file looks like. And it has a header saying what the station was that we processed, and also whether we use the 5-minute data set, and in this case we didn't. And now what this looks like is that for every hour that we processed, we have the wind speed in meters per second and the wind direction in degrees. Only 999 values mean that data missing or could not be processed by AerMinute. So for these hours, we don't have wind data apparently. So it's a pretty simple file. We have the date, in this case is January 1012, the hour 11, wind speed and wind direction for every hour. All right, so now finally let's take a look at what happens when we go ahead and take that hourly winds file and use it in AerMinute. And the modeling scenario file that you see now is the same as the one we had last week, except that, okay, here we go. It's the same file as we had last week, except that now we additionally have this AerMinute data. So what you have to do in AerMinute is to select this AerMinute data checkbox, click the checkbox, and then go to the AM tab to select the file, which I have done. So select the file. Now there's one more setting here, the threshold wind speed, saying that if the wind is below a certain speed in the AerMinute file, the wind speed file is going to be considered calm. And I have actually entered this setting of 0.5 meters per second, and this is based on that EPA memo from March 2013. This is what they recommend entering here. So now that these two settings have been applied in AerMinute, now we can go ahead and run AerMinute and have it apply the hourly winds data file. And we see that stage 1 ends successfully. So now we're going to run stage 2. And that ends successfully. And you will see a difference here in that at the bottom of the file, AerMinute will tell you that it is the 1 hour data file. Okay, so that ran successfully. And finally, we can run stage 3 and see what happens when we include the hourly winds data file. And we see that stage 3 for AerMinute also ran successfully. So everything worked. And now if we go to the bottom of the AerMinute file, we're going to see that the number of calm winds is just 820. And if you remember, when we ran this without AerMinute, it was 2,900. So now with AerMinute, the number of calm winds for this example model run is 820, which is quite a bit fewer hours that are calm. So in summary, you need to run the AerMinute model to create the hourly winds data file, then enter that file in the AM tab in AerMinute, to use it in AerMinute, and then run AerMinute to reduce the number of calm winds in your AerMinute output files. So that's the conclusion of our presentation. I will now go ahead and thank you everyone for attending, and I will now go ahead and take questions.